It is that season. Yes, it's cold outside. We need to figure out a way to keep our fermenter.
Made a way back in top of them hills where there's plenty of sunshine still.
Wow. Welcome back to Barley and Hops. Yep, I'm George. We are here to again try to unlock another one of those mysteries. Fermentation, maintaining temperature, and what are the effects? Yeah, that's a whole lot, but it's relatively straightforward. We all generally know what happens, first of all, if you cool your mash down below what, 90 degrees? Yeah, get it under 90 degrees before you pitch yeast. Now, why do we say that? Well, we know that if your temperature is too high in that large volume of mash, it will inoculate or actually kill off your yeast. So we want to get it below 90 degrees, knowing up front that once we pitch yeast and it starts to develop that colony, that the temperature will start to drop. But keep in mind, you've got all of that activity going on, and those yeast, you've got 15 billion yeast cells in just like 10 grams, and we're throwing in several ounces. So we're really giving it an opportunity to get going, okay? With all that activity, the temperature will again start to rise. And it'll rise, maybe 2 or 3 degrees in that volume. If you've got like a 5-gallon fermenter, you may see an increase of 2 to 3 degrees. And that's quite all right, because that's the activity of that yeast moving around and doing all that it does. And converting fermentable sugars into CO2 and ethanol. Okay, we got that. Now, once that process, see, they go through an aerobic phase and an anaerobic phase. Now, once they get into that anaerobic phase where they're operating and producing ethanol, and that is anaerobic without oxygen, it starts to slow down, meaning any kind of a temperature rise, and it starts to settle. All right? So you want to make sure you can maintain that environment for those yeast to continue to populate and to continue to operate. It's relatively that simple. But what happens? Here's what we know. We know that once the temperature starts to drop, what happens to your yeast? Well, they go dormant. It's just like when they start to run out of fermentable sugars, what do? They go dormant. They're pretty smart fellas. Okay, they stop operating when they run out of food. They stop operating when it gets too cold. Simply, you just warm it back up, and normally they'll take off again. We don't want that to happen, because then we start having interruptions in our fermentation stage, and it may take an extended period of time for that to finish out. Other things may happen, but plain and simple, we want to try to maintain the temperature. So I look at trying to maintain anywhere between 80 and 85 degrees in an environment. Why is that? Here's an example. If I've got this full, I don't now, but if I had this full of a mash, you can imagine what's here. If this was full of a mash and it started to cool down and it got below the fermentation temperature, somewhere around 73 to 76 degrees, if it got down below that, it would take an awful lot of energy in order to warm this back up, because I'm not just warming up the container, I have to warm up the volume inside this. Now, warming this up would not be as difficult as warming this up if it were full. You follow me so far? Yeah, I know you do. Now, so what I need an environment, because what happens is it starts to lose energy. It's just losing energy, it's losing heat to the outside environment. If the outside environment is cooler than the inside, then heat always travels from hot to cold. And so it'll start to lose energy. I need to make sure that the exterior environment is warm enough to prevent that transfer of heat. Make sense? Yeah. So the smaller, well, I don't want to say the smaller, but the more compact you can make this environment, the easier it is to maintain that temperature. Now, follow along, because this gets really good. I spent 26 bucks to build this temporary fermentation chamber. And I used 1-inch styrofoam insulation sheeting, and it has an R value of 6, which for those who are familiar with the R value of insulation, that's pretty good. You can use a 3/4, you can use a 1/2 inch. I don't know if I'd go any lower than that, but I guess you really could. It all depends on how large it's going to be, what it's going to hold, and you want to make sure that you start your environment maintaining while it's warm inside, as in this is the proper temperature, and then you make sure that the environment is warmer or as warm as this. Voila. Yeah. So I set this up. I made this one 16 inches wide, 24 inches tall, and I'll show you how I made this. It's so easy. At the end of the video, you can fast forward if you want to, but you're going to miss an important part. Oh, trust me. It's 32 inches deep in this particular case. I could put 2 fermenters in there, and I'm using a 60-watt light bulb. You can use a 100-watt light bulb. Remember, the higher you go, the more heat you're going to get out of that. But any type of a light source that you use in here, or heating source, use your imagination. There are many different sources of heat. I'm trying to maintain the temperature inside this chamber so that I do not lose the energy inside my fermenter. See, if I can maintain that, I never have to worry about it. Plus, I don't have to leave the heat on here on overnight. That becomes cost prohibitive, if you know what I mean. So what I use the PID. Now, I'm going to show you this, but I have 40 videos. Yeah, so it will answer any and every question. And here, yeah, there you go. I'll put up the link to the playlist of the 40. And this is, I think the playlist is called Maintaining Temperature in Your Still. And it will walk you through every type of PID controller, proportional, integral, derivative controller that we've used, how to build them, PID theory, electricity, how to wire them up, why they work, why they don't work, different options you have available. In this particular case, I built one with a meter so I can kind of, it's kind of cool. It's, you know, the cool points go way up, you know, when somebody comes over and I go, yeah, I can track the wattage of the light bulb, I can track the amperage, I can track the volts, I can track all that stuff. Is it really necessary? For me it is. It's, again, cool points. But the basic PID works really straightforward. Let me show you this. So here's a close-up of our PID. And let me explain how this actually works, because this is phenomenal. This is the device right here. This is Proportional Integral Derivative Controller. And you'll notice now that I have this, see, this, the bottom number is the SV, the set value. The top number is the perceived value, PV. And through this wire is my thermocouple, which is nothing more than a temperature probe that's inside. And so what it's doing right now is it's measuring the internal temperature, and it's doing its own calculations and providing just the necessary power, or the power necessary, in order to maintain that 85 degrees. And you'll notice that every time this red light comes on is when it's activated. So it's providing power and then stopping, and then providing power and stopping. But it does it, in those videos you'll find we have one in there about pulse width modulation. So it works very, very similar to modulating the pulse in order to provide the appropriate amount of power. You see, I can see down here that I'm 1.18, 16 watts, 1.2 watts, 8.5 watts. And that's how much power of that 65-watt light bulb was being used in order to provide the necessary amount of heat to maintain 85 degrees. See, it works the same way in a still. It'll do the exact same thing, so you can actually build your own. I've got an on-off button, and of course this one only operates, I've got this wired so that I've isolated the bottom receptacle. And this is really good for use in a still, because this is where you would put your water pump. So it works 100% of the time. Once you plug it in, it's working. But the top one only operates when the PID tells it to. So you'll notice now that it's dropped down to 84.9. So it's going to give it a little bit more power to bring it back up to 85 degrees. Now, to change this, it's relatively straightforward. You got these buttons on the bottom. You got an up arrow to increase the set value. You got a down arrow to decrease the set value, and on the far left is a set button to accept that. Let's increase this, and I've got this one set up so I can increase it by tenths of a degree. We're going to go up to 86 degrees and then hit the set button. It accepts that, and now you'll notice that my power is coming on a little bit more rapidly, a little bit more forcefully, and I'm getting more wattage, so it's trying to increase the amount of power to maintain that environment. See how straightforward that is? But remember, the key point is that whatever I put into this chamber should be at the temperature that I want to maintain, because it would take a lot of energy and a lot of time. It would probably work, but it would take a lot longer time for the environment to heat up the volume inside the fermenter. Let's get a look inside. Now I'm just going to remove the top, and I'll show you how I made this. And if you'll notice, if I lift this up, you'll see that I just got a 60-watt light bulb in a shield, and it just lays in there. Now you can design. It is nice and warm in there. You can design this any way you like. I cut that one sheet of insulation board. I cut it 16 by 24. 2 pieces, and then 32 by 24, 2 pieces. And then I cut 16 by 32 for my lid. Now on each one of these, I used my table saw, my handy table saw, and I cut a 45 degree on all 4 sides of this lid so it would fit down snug, and only on 3 sides of each one of these so that I could put it together. And once you place it together, then I just use just a piece of regular cellophane tape just to tape it together. That way I can untape it, stack it, put it away for the summer, pull it back out, and reassemble it. Now I also chose to have what I would call a floating base. And the base is just a big piece that I lay the fermenter on, and then I can place this over top of it. Just makes it a whole lot easier to maneuver around instead of trying to lift that fermenter up and place it inside. But I could put 2 fermenters in here with the light bulb in the center. Voila. I can maintain that environment. Then I don't lose any heat. Or I don't lose that much heat, and any heat that I'm losing, my PID is trying to make up for by applying that power, thus maintaining my environment and ensuring that I have a full fermentation for the entire period of time. What does that offer me though? I know that if I can maintain that environment, and I know that I'm repeating myself, that my fermentation time is anywhere from 7 to 10 days. We're all aware of that. I could be closer to that 7 days, maybe even lower than that 7 days for my total fermentation time, since I have no fluctuations in temperature and I have no interruptions in my fermentation. I hope that helps someone. Until next time. Yep, we got to get, let me get this other stuff set up so we can go right into starting our mash for our Saddleman's Cut. Happy distilling.